Today, we're looking at Faber Castell's Cobalt Blue. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, there's timestamps down below so that if you're only interested in certain parts, you can skip around. But if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. You can also follow me over on Instagram. And if you're new here and like fountain pen ink reviews, I would invite you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Nimacine Fission with a broad nib to write for a day and to take my notes for this video. In order to standardize some of my writing samples, I always use Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper for all of the inks. I do use other papers, and some of those will show up later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to make sure I keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairefontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone than the stub, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, and definite spots of shading, like the word brown starts dark and works its way lighter all the way. The word quick starts dark, gets light, gets very dark again. So there's some nice shading that happens throughout this writing. And 12 seconds to dry. Now the medium is darker than the extra fine, but not as dark as the stub, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, and again, some very nice shading throughout. Like when we look at the word over, it starts lighter on the O, and then at the V becomes very dark. Same at the, starts light, gets very dark at the he part. 15 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows plenty of color variation, and we're getting a ton of it. The shading is nice. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine, lighter than the stub, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, some nice shading throughout, like brown starts dark, works its way light. Fox starts dark, gets to a mid-tone in the middle, and then becomes very dark again. Over starts lighter and gets darker, 18 seconds to dry. Medium is quite a bit lighter than the extra fine. The medium has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and the shading definitely takes it up a notch here. Quick starts very dark, gets to a nice mid-tone, gets very dark again. Brown starts very dark, gets very light. Over starts very light, gets very dark. Same with the, very light to very dark. Lazy, light to dark. Nice. 26 seconds to dry. I think it's worth it here. The scrubby for both shows plenty of color variation, and we got tons of color variation. Rhodia dot pad. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shading in that writing. Now the extra fine is a lighter tone than we got with the stub. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo sheen. It offers some shading. It's a darker tone most of the way through here, but you get letters that themselves are much darker, like the H in the is much darker than the T or the E. The LA is much darker than the ZY. D is much darker than the rest of the word. 14 seconds to dry. Now medium is even lighter a tone than we got with the extra fine. The medium has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and the shading is again fantastic. Like H in the is much darker than the T or the E. The K is much darker than the rest of the word quick. B is much darker than the rest of the word brown. X in fox is much darker. So it makes an abrupt much darker for a short period of time here. Still looks very good. 20 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both shows plenty of color variation, and we got plenty of color variation. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see just where this ink is getting its depth that's occurring sometimes. It starts with this very nice purple that works its way up and then becomes a very rich, bright blue. Now the one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And most of that purple is staying in the line at the bottom. Yes, some of it is moving up. It's moving with the blue, but not nearly as much. It doesn't even look like the same color there. It's just that it's all still together on the bottom. Now the blue, I expect to wash away, but that purple, I think, is going to be a resistant color. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, the capital H has a lot of blooming and feathering going on. Now, the entire word went from about an extra fine to a fine. There's a ton of tiny little feathers all over. It's just, I don't know. I don't know if I would or wouldn't use this in a note-taking situation. The top of the lowercase h makes me worry, but I say that, but I don't really highlight very often. Now, water's reactivating and lifting most of this ink off the paper. If you look at the upper right side of the water dot that's below the H2O that's written, you start to see the white of the paper coming through, which does make me say that water should be all that's needed given some time to get this out of your pen. Even though it's not doing a ton there, it only had 30 seconds. Pen Flush did everything that water did and a bit more, but it's showing that perhaps that purple is gonna really hang around, but I didn't have any problem with any of the Graf von Faber Castell inks I tested. But just in case, you get to see it. Now the 1/3 bleach solution, I didn't need it. I don't think you're gonna need it, but the 1/3 bleach solution does completely obliterate it. Just make sure if you use it, you wash your pen with water immediately after. As far as viscosity or flow, for the inks I've tested, I've found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Graf von Faber Castell's Cobalt Blue has a viscosity of 1.91, making it a little bit wetter than normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those, and for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Graf von Faber Castell's Cobalt Blue has an average dry time of 18 seconds, making it normal. Instead of finding inks that look like Graf von Faber Castell's Cobalt Blue, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page, and I wanted to try out some yellows, and I went with Diamine Amber. The second writing sample is done on yellow Rhodia, white lines, and limon paper. I like to break out the yellow Rhodia from time to time and see how it alters the color of the ink that we're putting down. So if we put the white next to the yellow, we do see this very blue becomes very turquoisey. Becomes a really nice turquoise with yellow Rhodia paper. Now it's just something to be aware of if you're in a professional situation and you think you're using blue and then you get turquoise because of the yellow paper. But I think this tone is very nice. It just means that this ink itself is a little bit more translucent. Now its performance on the yellow Rhodia is the same as it was with the standard Rhodia, so there's no need to go back and do it again. White lines paper, which has not traditionally been great with fountain pen inks, but I have managed to find a bunch that it's doing well with, like this one. No bleeding, no ghosting. Fantastic. You could use the back of the page without a problem. Now the 1.1 stub has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade, but it looks good here on this gray tone. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 6 seconds to dry. And as we've seen a bunch of times, the medium is even lighter than the extra fine. The medium has no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does offer shade spots. Like T in the is darker than he. The K in quick is much darker than the B right next to it in brown, and Fox starts light and gets dark. 7 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine shows us no color variation, and we got none, and the scrubby of the medium, looking far left to far right, shows us color variation, and we got it. Very nice white lines. Congratulations. limon paper, a paper that's also had trouble with a lot of different fountain pen inks, has some bleed spots with the stub. Not with the extra fine, not with the medium. It has quite a bit of ghosting with the stub because of the bleed spots. Strangely, the extra fine shows little ghosting spots and the medium shows none. The 1.1 stub has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub. It has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. 4 seconds to dry. The medium is even lighter than the extra fine with, again, no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. 6 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows us no color variation. We got none. The scrubby of the medium shows us some when we look far left to far right, which means it's possible we're just not getting it in this writing sample. So we do see that the nib is altering its color, and that is all that I have for the writing sample. So what do I think of Faber Castell's Cobalt Blue? While it can offer some color variation in the writing, it still has an ability to come across as an ordinary blue in your professional settings. So what pen and nib is going to give you the best writing experience? While a stub will give you very nice color variation, it's not going to help you out in the office. However, broad wets and broad mediums look great. If you've enjoyed this video, remember, I like thumbs up, you like thumbs up, everybody likes thumbs up. Unless you didn't like it, then give me the thumbs down. Both are good. Thanks for watching.